Okay. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for broadcast, streaming, and stadiums, where Gen Z is taking media rights next. And we're so excited to have you here with us tonight on behalf of the Youth Sports Science Institute. At YSSI, we explore how technology, youth culture, and science intersect in the sports world. Tonight, conversation dives into how Gen Z is reshaping the entire media rights landscape, from how we watch games to how teams connect with fans. I'm Krisha, a youth ambassador with YSSI, and I'm passionate about how young people use technology to make sports more interactive and inclusive. I'll be guiding us through introductions and later ending and doing the closing. Joining me is my co moderator, Ayan Arora, also a youth ambassador with YSSI.
Thanks, Krisha. I'm Ayan Arora. I'm also a youth ambassador at YSSI. I'm super excited to bring these new perspectives here tonight and to lead our panel discussion on how Gen Z is reshaping the future of sports media rights.
Well, we're honored to be joined by three incredible voices who sit at the intersection of sports media, and technology. First, we have Nia Robinson, a social media manager and creative strategist for Chicago Sky. She dives she drives digital storytelling, brand voice, and fan engagement across platforms, helping Sky build authentic connections with Gen Z through creativity and community. Next, we have Adam Grossman, a founder and managing director of Roar and lecturer at Northwestern University's MSA program. He brings deep expertise in sports analytics, media rights, and sponsorship strategy. Last but not the least, we have Scott Lynch, a creative director and head of XR development at Voyre. He designs immersive interactive experiences that merge sports and storytelling through AR and VR technology. With introductions complete, I'll hand it over to Ayan to kick off the panel conversations.
Thank you, Krisha. Let's dive right in with our first topic. So, Nia, Gen Z grew up in a digital first world, but they still show up to games. How are their expectations for the live stadium experience different from previous generations? And how should teams and leagues adapt to their in-person offerings to meet those expectations?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm really happy to be here with you all, and I'm just really excited to learn from Scott and Adam and just, keep the conversation going. I think specifically when we're talking about the difference between Gen Z and earlier generations when it comes to sports experience is their behaviors have changed a lot. So I think there's more of an expectation on music, for example. Mainly one difference is I would say between like the WNBA where I am and other sports in leagues is that music is a huge part of the game day experience. Like it's really, really loud. And Gen Z is actually more vocal about the kind of music that they want to hear, even music partnerships and bringing people out to games, whether it's, halftime performers, anthem performers, and things like that. But then even the game itself. So or not the game itself, but the like concessions and stuff like that. Gen Z, and I'm considered Gen Z and I'm 28, we're drinking a lot less, for example. And so they have to make sure that there's non-alcoholic and mocktails and everything is up to par. So you're catching people where they are just because people are spending a lot less money at games and really just overall when it comes to entertainment.
Wow, that's interesting. Scott and Adam, do you guys have anything else to add?
From my perspective, you know, the I guess I'm seeing that people want to engage socially with both people that are there that are there in the experience with them, but also be connected. So I think we're seeing a lot of people wanting to share the moments and the experience of being live, but with their own audiences, and that may be their group of friends, but it also may be a wider influencer audience as well. So I think you're kind of seeing this blend of the both people existing in the live event space, but also wanting to share that with like an at-home audience or like a virtual audience as well. So I think that's really interesting side of things.
Yeah, somebody who is definitely not in Gen Z, definitely pushing it even on the millennial side. I would say echo a lot of what Scott and Nia would say, but really understanding consumption patterns, understanding how things have changed. I think, um, one of the ironies of the growth of digital and digital channels, AR, VR, artificial intelligence is that it is encouraging younger people in particular, but people of all ages to want and crave in real life experiences and to have in real life experiences that cater to the things that they want. Nia brings up a good point about alcohol and alcohol consumption, particularly for younger demographics. So creating in real life experiences that align with what people are expecting or want to have at those experiences, whether that's the sport itself, the content, what they're going to eat, drink, what they're actually going to get from the live event to what Scott does with AR and VR, which is short for augmented reality and virtual reality, and creating even within the live experiences, blending some digital elements to that to make those experiences more fun, more entertaining. But I think it really is understanding that, as particularly Gen Z has become more digitally oriented and way more than even previous generations, they're still craving these live, in-person, real-life experiences in the way that Nia and Scott described.
Yeah, thank you guys. So Adam, linear TV deals and media rights have long been the backbone of sports revenue. As Gen Z consumes more content on short-form platforms and streaming services, how should leagues and broadcasts evolve their media rights strategies without losing the value of those traditional rights?
Yeah, I think one, there is some. I mentioned as media rights being the backbone. Actually, media originally it was in person and in game attendance, and for a lot of teams it still is in person. Or a lot of particularly emerging in game and attendance is a big part of that. And media rights originally disrupted the in game and in person attendance model. So if you think like particularly in the early 20th century, it was focused along the in person, in game, in experience was the primary, and not if not the total kind of focus of revenue. There was a real fear that media rights, first on radio, then on television, was going to disrupt the live game experience. And what it ended up proving is that if you have the right media consumption, combine that with the right experiences, that can actually drive attendance. In a book I co-authored called The Sports Strategist, we talk about the Ultimate Fighter and the UFC and how the Ultimate Fighter, the media rights, or the show, The Ultimate Fighter, ended up being a big boon to driving attendance to ultimate fights and competitions and events. And I think you'll see that, as the media channels proliferate, there's going to be an opportunity to do that as well. But I think the real step forward, particularly for the Gen Z generation, is content creators and partnering with content creators like Mr. Beast or, depending on each sport, there's different content creators, but combining live rights with traditional channels and content creators who can reach particularly Gen Z audiences is definitely a path forward that leagues are already exploring, where the NBA in particular has partnered with content creators, I believe in Brazil, where they broadcast a live game specifically on a content creator's channel. So they maintain their live rights and media rights, but are looking to engage with younger audiences, both domestically and internationally, by pairing with content creators.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Many Gen Z fans follow athletes and highlights more than full games. What does this shift mean for how leagues negotiate further media contracts, and how can rights holders package live games in ways that feel essential to this new audience? Scott, would you like to answer?
It's a question that I'm not, let's see. What I would say is that, sorry, I caught me a little off guard.
That's all right.
So we're basically saying that, sorry, can you read the question for me one more time?
Sure. Many Gen Z fans follow athletes and highlights more than full games.
Right.
What does this shift mean for how leagues negotiate further media contracts, and how can rights holders package live games in ways that feel essential to this new audience?
Well, I guess I can't speak too much on like how to package the rights together because it's not an area that I do a lot of work in. But I would say, like, as far as the building connections between, say, stars and the performers and the people within this, like, who are, like, say, the performers, like the athletes and the audience, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to build more informal content around those personalities and those platforms to reach these newer audiences. Like, one thing I've observed is that there's a lot of people spend a lot of time like listening to podcasts. People want to kind of feel like they're hanging out with these people that they otherwise don't have access to. And I think that's a really good way to kind of make these people a little bit more approachable and kind of scale that feeling of access. And so I'd like to see a lot more athletes in particular, and I think you see some of them really kind of as they build their own brands, even starting the college age. But continuing to kind of use and nurture their own audiences by kind of creating more social content, I think is something that we'll continue to see more of.
Yeah, I see. Nia, do you have any insights on this?
Yeah, so something that we're actually exploring, or a lot of teams are exploring, specifically within the NBA, is superimposing logos on their highlights. And so that's one way where you're not really losing out on sponsorship deals and other things like that. And for those who don't know what that means, let's say you have the court and they're doing a free throw, for example, and we download that clip, you'll see like a Glossier or a Skims or a WNBA that isn't actually on the court, but it looks like it is. And so that's something that we've been thinking a lot about. And knowing that people are using social media and highlights to watch games, I think what a lot of leagues are failing to realize is that it's often because either cable and ESPN and all these options are too expensive for young people. And on the other side of it, because it's just too hard sometimes. Like I think a lot of WNBA fans have communicated that before, where they have to download so many different apps and have ESPN or League Pass, or it's nationally televised, and kind of just like do this whole runaround just to watch their favorite teams. And if they made it easier, one part of it, and then if they packaged it in a way where it was a one-stop shop, I think we would find more people watching it live. I mean, obviously the viewership is going up, so that's not the problem. And then I think another thing as well too is we're seeing the rise in different sports locations showing these shows as well too, whether it's Babes is a new sports bar that opened up, I think more accessible to I think people who may not be of age, is watch parties and things like that. And so when we are talking about media rights and the deals that are being enacted, I do think that eventually we're going to see a lot of deals include, I think, that hybrid in real life and also digital, and how can we overall improve the sports fan experience and make the most amount of money as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Go ahead.
No, Adam, would you have anything like you want to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna build on what Scott and Nia said, but there are there is a company called Buzzer that was specifically designed to work with media rights holders to distribute highlights at specific times in specific games. And this is one area where artificial intelligence there is a real use case for artificial intelligence in sports, having some kind of, automated either agent, or otherwise that can give you alerts to say this is when certain things are happening. So I do want to emphasize what Scott said. There are a lot of people, even of your age, who prefer long form content. So it's not just that only young people want to see highlights. There's a lot of shows, there's a lot of documentaries, there's a lot of podcasts that have achieved a lot of success reaching the younger audiences that do want long form content. But if in terms of highlights, A, carving out highlights as their own separate part of media rights agreements, B, there's Buzzer isn't the only company. There are other companies, and in doing what Nia was saying, in terms of integrating, both having highlights, but integrating branded content, whether that's logos or other kinds of branded integrations directly into the highlights, and distributing those across social or digital channels and platforms, so that it addresses what Nia was talking about. Like if I can get a artificial intelligence, for lack of a better term, agent that's like a virtual person who can work as your assistant, for lack of a better term, to tell you where are the games, when are they on, and then potentially proactively identify highlights within the game so that you can consume the content at that point. But there are going to be increasingly carve outs to do that. And then it goes back to my original point about content creators, pairing with content creators, either highlights or with media rights more generally, so that you can get the content into the channels and form that most likely, for at least for parts of the audience that wants highlights or wants to engage with content creators rather than, maybe with full games, proactively doing that. And the NBA, like I said, is one league, but all leagues are exploring partnerships, NBA, NFL, MLB, and not just major professional leagues, but major professional leagues, emerging leagues. They're all looking at that kind of distribution model.
I see. Thank you all. Adam, another question for you. For young fans, the stadium isn't just a place to watch the game, it's a destination. How are teams using real estate development, entertainment districts, and mixed use spaces around arenas to create a year-round engagement and deepen brand loyalty among Gen Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit the question kind of has some of the response in it, but the idea is sports, particularly sports franchises or sports properties, so think teams and leagues are exploring in terms of mixed use development. I wrote a paper about sports anchored mixed use development. So a sports anchor you can think of as a stadium, an arena, a practice facility, a corporate office. And then so that's the anchor, that's the sports anchor. And then the development would have either residential, commercial, office, entertainment, community, youth sports, all these different types of things that could surround that area. So in Chicago, there's the 1901 project that's being done. Obviously, the Chicago Bears are pursuing a mixed use development in Arlington Heights. And the point of, or one point of these, particularly for younger fans, is to create, like you said, engagement opportunities. So what you want to have as part of a strategy is why would people want to live, work, shop, play, and be entertained in these districts? And the common question for sports team is not what happens on a game night, but what happens on a non-game night or what happens on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and creating opportunities by understanding what Gen Z is interested in. And there's different ways that you can do that. You can look at survey data. You can look at, Gen Z as they increasingly get opportunities to spend money. What are they spending their money on? What are they spending their time on? What are they interested in? What locations do they go to? There are different data sources that can help guide that decision-making process, so that you can create the opportunities for younger demographics and Gen Z folks or Gen Z's people to, that's a terrible word. I can't believe I just said that, but Gen Z, younger people to engage with sports brands and sports properties throughout the year. But you really, it's not just, there's a famous line in Field of Dreams, which again is probably not a good thing to say when you're talking about Gen Z, but if you build it, they will come. From a sports perspective, they will come if you build it correctly, right? So it's like you have to think about what you're doing and think about it strategically so that it does create the opportunities for these younger fans.
Yeah, thank you. So Scott, I know that the next generation wants more than just a seat. They want an experience. What innovations in stadium design, technology, or fan services are most likely helping Gen Z showing up in person, even as digital options grow?
Yeah. Well, some of the things that we're seeing rolling out in the market now are smart glasses, which are allowing people to start having augmented style experiences and information, being able to be presented to them in a spatially aware context. So basically that means like when you start to physically be inside of a space, we can start to really enhance your particular viewpoint. So for example, if like somebody who is using a smartphone with augmented reality app or with like a pair of smart glasses can now have graphics and animations that like are from their viewpoint that maybe help enhance the game experience or even connect them to people that are maybe not sitting right next to them. So maybe you have like maybe your friends have tickets in a different section, but then some of these new augmented style technologies can help you share that experience together, regardless of if you're physically next to each other or not. I think we're gonna also see like some just like more nuts and bolts style of uh, uses for this type of technology. For example, like when it comes to sales of food and beverage, I think you'll see things like advertisements and other kinds of things being incorporated into that space. Maybe it's, if we're talking about like, being able to advertise about other things that are happening in these entertainment districts, you're going to be able to have a better understanding of like, oh, like this like after the game there's this special at this restaurant that's right down the street, and maybe I can go start seeing like more 3D representations of what might entice me to go spend some money there or spend some time there. So I think you're going to see some of that stuff inside the stadiums themselves. Another thing, just as far as like capture technology, we have there's a lot of video cameras that capture the game for broadcast. We're starting to see a trend or some exploration in the what we call the volumetric capture of like what's happening in the field, whether that's capturing all the soccer players on the field, or in some cases it's just tracking the data of, say, like F1 cars, like as they go around the track. So you can then start presenting that data to people almost like on a tabletop in front of them. And so it allows them to say, for sports that maybe are not contained to like a small court, this allows people to then understand what's happening contextually in a much more natural way. So I think we're going to start seeing just more and more of that kind of stuff on top of the, sort of the immersive streaming that we're going to start seeing. Meta's been doing some of that with in their Quest VR headset. Apple's going to start streaming some Lakers games. So I think we're going to start also seeing sort of more immersive broadcasts happening that will give you access to like those courtside seats that you might not otherwise have the ability to have. So those are kind of some of the things that we're seeing on the horizon here.
That's really cool. Nia, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I definitely think when we're talking about the game experience, at the Sky, we do a lot of theme games, and that's been proven to get people in the stadium. And it's surprising that depending on, like I know the Cubs do it very well, and that's where you also have custom giveaways. But even on top of that, they have strategic partnerships. I know they had a Hello Kitty night, for example, and it the kind of things like that that maybe I don't really care about the sport, but I do care about getting that Hello Kitty like that thing. So I think that's part of it. I think also when we're talking about the concourse activations needing to be a bit more, I would say, innovative with those too, because I don't know. I feel like if I go to a lot of sports, or if I have been going to a lot of events, eventually like the game day atmosphere is a lot of fun, but I'm going to want something different. And so whether it's, here is a custom heat press station where with your free giveaway, again, free, you can either customize the shirt that happens to always be extra large or double extra large, or like, I don't know, just kind of things like that. And that's something that we're exploring a lot. I think also too, when we are talking about technology, we do see a lot of QR codes and interacting with the game itself. So now on our app, you can go to the light it up section, and in the beginning or at different moments that are happening throughout the game, you kind of go there, and then everyone almost like you're at a concert, and so different things where you can say, "Wow, that was a lot of fun." I would say the Chicago Fire do a really good job, I think, in their game day experience as well too, in terms of bringing people back. And I know that we're talking about technology, but really surprisingly, it's the things that I remember are I think the human interactions. Like fans often start the wave around the stadium, and that's the first time I've ever been at a sporting event with a successful wave. I'm so serious, and it's something I think about where wow, I had a really good time, and I'm not thinking about this new technology. I'm thinking about the fact that sports are supposed to bring people together, and that's exactly what's happening. I know they had a concert series as well too. So after you could either stay in your seat, you're able to move down. My friend worked there, so I was on the field, and that was super, super cool, or fireworks. And so one thing that I'm really excited to see is how we both root our strategies in the analog, but then also the digital. Because if it's not broken, you don't really need to fix it. But at the same time, too, these are all tools for a reason. And it's really just finding the correct recipe for the team. Because if you're winning, for example, you actually don't have to do as much. But with a team like the Valkyries, for example, especially being new, it's probably in your best benefit to drop Sephora gift cards down from the arena. And if I'm seeing that at home, which I was seeing that at home, I really wish I was there. And so, yeah, I think it's really just telling the story of the experience, and making people not necessarily have FOMO, but making people feel like I want to go out there while still being part of that experience, no matter where they are.
Yeah, I definitely think the interactive aspect is a huge part of it. Adam, anything else?
Well, but I don't think I'm too old or not cool enough to say FOMO, so I will definitely not say that. But yeah, I mean, the only other thing, again, echoing what Scott and Nia said, but Mark Cuban, when he was talking about what he wanted from his experience, he wanted people to focus on look up moments versus look down moments, right? They wanted to be looking up from their phones, from their technology, to have the type of communal experiences. Doesn't mean that technology, particularly the way that Scott described, where you can use augmented reality to create virtual communities even within the stadium itself, so that you can, feel like you're interacting with somebody even across the arena and they feel like they're right next to you. Doesn't mean technology can't play a role, but to have that kind of experience that Nia is describing, where you feel like you're really part of something larger and part of a community and part of having that live experience is really helpful. And to the point about analog versus digital, I think the Intuit Dome is probably a good example. Steve Ballmer, who famously he has a lot of other things going on right now from the NBA, which we won't get into, but famously he was the former CEO of Microsoft. But his number one thing that he is known for about the Intuit Dome is toilets, right? Is having just many more toilets so that people will get back to their seats faster so they can have those types of communal seating. He also has more beverage stands, faster ways to make payments, particularly with just checkout technology where you don't have to pay any, there's no vendor there. You just walk in, it automatically scans your credit card and you can walk out. So there's a lot of, and he led the building of the Intuit Dome specifically to have the types of experiences. So that will facilitate communal engagement and making the live experience better. And then I would also, like what Nia was saying in terms of giveaways, promotions, those are also helpful. And then one of the other things that teams are exploring with is, instead of on a per game basis for tickets, having something that's more like a pass where you can go to certain parts of the stadium and either stand or, have the ability not to be locked into certain dates or certain times, but have more flexibility on like a season pass type deal where you can use those tickets that maybe aren't the best seats, but you don't want to miss out on the game. You don't want to miss out on the community. And for younger demographics, those lower price or more affordable options allow them to take part in this type of community type event.
Yeah, I see. Um, my last planned question, Gen Z, I'm sorry. Gen Z's attention is fragmented, but their loyalty can be powerful when earned. What strategies, from social media storytelling to live event innovation, will most effectively convert casual young fans into lifelong supporters of the teams and leagues? Scott, would you like to go first?
Well, in all the different kinds of organizations, I've done a lot of work across kind of the entertainment spectrum, whether it's film and music, and also sport. The thing that really drives it, kind of to echo what we were just talking about, is this idea of building community. You want people like to do things in a social context because they feel connected. You don't go to events often by yourself. Most people go in a group. And so anything that you can do, whether it's from telling the stories that give people FOMO, like, oh, like that thing looked really fun, that thing looked really exciting. Now I want to go participate myself because there's like an extra enhancement of just kind of like being with other people. So I think as we kind of think about telling those stories, I think just emphasizing, you know, that you're going to go be with people and that's going to make you feel really good. You're going to feel a part of something. When the technology should always lean into that, whether that's through storytelling, through the social media, and making people feel like they have more of a personal connection with either the players or other fans. I think enhancing the I know in sort of soccer, there's, a lot more emphasis on these sort of clubs. I kind of think that might be a place to kind of, for a lot of sports teams, to lean a bit more into, because then you have, again, sort of like a social group that people are looking to kind of be a part of something. And I think that's what, whether they're Gen Z or millennial or, boomers or anybody, I think everybody we have a core human need to want to connect and belong. And so as long as we tell stories that like enhance and encourage people to participate, Gen Z's gonna want to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Nia, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is really capitalizing on the subcultures that fans really care about. So, for example, when I talk about the Affinity Night theme games, whether it's our Divine Nine or Juneteenth or our Hispanic Heritage Month, really capitalizing on what makes the culture unique. So, for example, for Hispanic Heritage Month, we had a piñata, and it was cool to see, fans of all different ages and backgrounds being able to like interact with this. For Juneteenth, I would love to have horses at the stadium. That's a huge part of Juneteenth. And I think when teams are able to capitalize on what makes their offering, their stadium, their team, and mixing that with what makes whatever they're celebrating or honoring unique, that's where the magic really happens, especially when you have a team that maybe doesn't have that much of a winning record. I know something that I focus on a lot are the live experiences, whether it's, watch parties. I would love to do a bar crawl to the stadium for opening night, or like kind of things like that, where no matter what the game outcome was, fans walk away saying, wow, I had so much fun. What is the next thing that we're about to do? When Babes opened a few weeks ago, we showed up with merch and we just passed everything out. Like extra giveaways that we had, you name it, we passed it out. We passed it out. And it was so cool to hear fans say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I got this pride hat. I wasn't able to go to the game, and I've been thinking about it ever since. And so it's really showing up in the community and meeting people where they are. And I think another thing that I'm really passionate about is making sure that when we are in season, whether it's the stars or the sky, because we are still trying to, I think, tell our story a bit more in a way that really resonates with the city. And so when I walk into places, I shouldn't have to ask them to put on the game, or I shouldn't have to hear them say, well, we don't have that channel. It should already be on. And so how do we do that? And yeah, I don't know. I think when it comes to Gen Z, there are so many, we talk about this attention economy online and in person. There's just so much to do and there's just so much to see. And how do we make sure in what we're offering, how do we make sure that we're number one and we're their number one option? And if we're not their number one option, we're going to catch them somewhere to make sure that we're not missing out on these key opportunities. I think storytelling online is a huge part of it with the players specifically and their interests and things like that. Like Ariel Atkins, for example, loves Spider-Man, and one idea we had was taking her to the Spider-Man exhibit in Chicago and making some content around that. I think, for example, Sonia Citron, I believe she has roots in Cape Verde and Senegal, and I saw a lot of WNBA fans being like, we should have known that. I would have bought her jersey months ago. My grandma would have bought her jersey had they known that we had that connection. And so I think teams really need to capitalize on all aspects of a player identity, not just what happens on the court, because it helps the players who may not have that much of a following or who are newer to the league. And it's also a revenue driver. But then on the other side of that, it really just humanizes people. And so when we're not winning, I think people can remember to be a bit more thoughtful in how they talk about players because they're not just someone who's meant to be on the court.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Adam, do you have any final insights for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to do it is exactly the way excuse me, that Nia and Scott described, but organic, authentic engagement. So like if you really want to engage with Gen Z, and any demographic profile, it's really like what kind of what Nia was saying with a basketball player who was interested in Spider-Man, right? There's a lot of things that people could be interested in, but they really engage with content, with people, with teams that talk to them organically and authentically, right? If you're not doing something, you can't just say all of a sudden we are, you know, celebrating something that's never been a part of the organization. A player who's not interested in something, it's very clear when the content is forced or content is, derived because they think they need to meet the moment, or there's a meme that's going around that of which the team or the league or the entity has no connection to, but are trying to take advantage of. So understanding the players and their interest is really important. Understanding the fans and their interest is really important, and even understanding the partners and sponsors and their interests and what they're passionate about and how they connect. Because anything you can do to encourage organic, authentic connection is really what people, of all ages, but particularly Gen Z, are looking for. And sports teams, because of like what Scott has said, sports teams have a unique, as compared to almost any other business in the world, people are passionate about sports teams in ways they are not passionate about other things, particularly other businesses. So you're starting from a place of people want to like you and they're passionate about the players and the product and what it means to a local community. Making sure to tap into that in organic and authentic ways is really ways that can drive success for organizations with younger demographics, but for all ages as well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Krisha, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much to Nia, Adam, and Scott for being here tonight and sharing such awesome perspectives. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this conversation. We've covered a lot, from how Gen Z is changing and what it means to actually show up to sports, to how tech is blurring the lines between the stadium and the screen. I loved what Nia said about how Gen Z fans are more vocal than ever, whether it's about music, content, or how they watch their teams and how accessibility really matters. Adam talked about how the future of sports media isn't just about replacing old systems, but reimagining them using things like AI, partnerships, and even stadium developments that bring people together beyond game day. And Scott painted such a cool picture of what's next. From smart glasses and AI overlays to fans being able to share real time experiences with both people next to them and their virtual audience. If there's one big takeaway that I took from this, it's that we're redefining how we want connection, authenticity, and moments that feel personal and easy to access. And it's exciting to think about how teams and leagues are adapting to meet that. On behalf of the Youth Sports Science Institute, I'd like to thank you again for spending your evening with us. Stay connected with the YSSI on LinkedIn and keep an eye out for our next Sports and STEM event coming this fall. Thanks again and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.